Hello and welcome back to my channel What If Deku 2.0. Join us as we delve into the realms of fanfiction and fantasy, bringing you the best stories and discussions. Today we're kicking off part 1 of our series, What If Deku Was Owner of Cat Cafe? If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe for more content in the future. The author of this story is Arj12 from Archive of Our Own. All the relevant links are in the description. Feel free to say hello to the author on their profile. Now let's dive into the fanfic. A police file is slapped down onto the interrogation table. Helios, a 23-year-old with a frighteningly powerful quirk. The Vigilante made herself known around 6 years ago and has been going strong ever since. The woman sitting opposite of the detective gives him a SHT-eating grin. Highly dangerous and wanted by the police. The woman snickers and Tsukachi sighs. She's going to be the death of me. Oh yeah, I've heard of her. What's that got to do with me, officer? I'm an upstanding citizen. I've even got a full-time job now. The green-haired woman gives her best innocent smile. Don't try that with me, Midoriya. We've got you on camera and everything. You're not getting out of this again. He scowls, but admittedly he's getting a little worried. She seems to really be in for it this time. But he's still hopeful. There's a reason nobody's been able to pin anything on her before. She's slippery, and no matter how many times they bring her in, nothing sticks. But officer, I'm innocent. Have you seen the tapes that supposedly incriminate me? She tilts her head. The officer falters. Well, no, but that's no dash. I suggest you watch them then. You'll see. She seems too calm, and Tsukachi knows instantly that she has something up her sleeve. He leaves to watch the tapes. He replays them only to find a statusy mess. You see, they never have any evidence that Inko Midoriya is Helios, but just her attitude alone is highly suspicious. He breathes a sigh of relief as he gets ready to release his friend suspect. He comes back with a small smile on his face that he fails to suppress. Alright, spill it. How'd you mess with the tapes? Inko holds out her arms to be freed from their cuffs with a smirk. Again, I'm completely blameless for whatever these crazy vigilantes are up to nowadays. I just keep being at the wrong place at the wrong time. She lies through her teeth as the officer she's become very familiar with over the last few years lets her out. Oh, and say hi to your son Naomasa, won't you, Tsukachi? He smiles begrudgingly at her. He won't lie, he's grown a bit fond of her. What can he say, her energy is infectious. Have a good night, ma'am. He waves goodbye. He would say he's surprised, but everyone in the precinct knows that catching Helios is pretty much a lost cause. 1 hour later. Inko cracks her neck and stretches her arms. Those cuffs are a beach. Unfortunately, sore wrists will be far from the worst part of her night. After getting out of that pinch at the station, Inko's night goes downhill fast. It's a little ridiculous how awful a life can become in a matter of hours. It starts with a call from one of her associates, an info broker named Jiren. He's kinda grumpy, but his information is good, so she tolerates him. She heads over to their meeting place. She walks into the bar and spots the gray-haired man in the corner. Hey ya. She waves at the man. Hello, Helios. The man returns her smile before starting his debrief. And this is the time that she'll look back on and say, here. This is where it went wrong. But you know what they say about hindsight being 20/20. Jiren talks and Inko feels her world crack. He pulls out pictures and she feels the breath leave her lungs. You see, Inko thinks of herself as a sensible woman. And up until about a minute ago she had plenty of reasons to believe that. But here she is staring wide-eyed at a file filled with life-ruining information that she should have seen coming. He's been going by the alias Hisashi for the past few years. He speaks dully like he's talking about the weather, not a mass murderer. She tunes him out as she stares down at the file mouth agape. Because she knew him. That charming, fiery, and clever man. Who just so happens to be the most feared villain in the underground. Inko had heard chatter about him from time to time. Most believed him to be a myth, a legend, a scary bedtime story for kids. But Inko knows better, he's as real as it gets. She has laughed with him, cried with him, even slept with him. Holy Mother of All Might, she slept with a murderer. She clears her throat trying to shake herself out of her daze. Thank you, Jiren, I appreciate this, she says, voice wavering as she hands the file back to the man. He looks a touch worried for a moment. Are you all right, Helios? You appear quite shaken. I'm fine, just a little distracted tonight. She smiles, though she knows her face is covered by her mask. Jiren hums in understanding. Well, I hope you feel better. I can't have my favorite vigilante off her game. He smiles warmly, though she knows his kindness and compassion are nothing more than a show. That's all right with her, though. She gets information and he gets an ally. There's nothing wrong with some well wishes, fake though they may be. Have a good night, sir. She nods goodbye, trying to conceal her shaking hands. 1 week later. Inko sits on the floor of a drugstore bathroom holding 4 different PRGNCY tests all saying the same thing. Well, she can't help but feel foolish. She thought she was smart but she ended up knocked up by a villain before she turned 25. What an idiot. Hisashi was just so nice. She met him in the grocery store a year ago and they clicked instantly. Or at least she thought they did. Now that she's looking back at it, everything about him was a little too perfect. He was everything that she wanted and she supposes that was the objective. She is very grateful that he never found out about her vigilante persona. She didn't want to worry him so she kept it to herself. She chuckles at the sad irony. She tears up for the billionth time as she looks at the little blue lines on the test. But despite her common sense telling her that having Hisashi's baby is a terrible no-good idea, she's happy. She's always wanted to be a mother. And although all for one is terrifying, she doesn't think she can give up an opportunity to have a kid. Isn't that just the worst thing you've ever heard? She smiles despite herself. I'm going to be a mom. 2 days later. All for one reads the letter left on his bedside table with a considerable amount of confusion, which is a pretty rare emotion for him. After a moment he sighs irritability. Inko Midoriya would have been an impeccable Nomo. But for some inexplicable reason she ran away leaving nothing behind but a silly breakup note with a cliché reason about how, it's not you, it's me, and how he was the right person at the wrong time. If All for One was a more relaxed person perhaps he would have chuckled at the silly sentiments. But he's not known for his easygoing nature so he burns the letter and picks up his phone to call an associate for a new identity. If his 200 years on this godforsaken planet have taught him anything, it's knowing when to let things go. Besides there are billions of people in this world who would make suitable nomas anyway. Might as well try again someplace else. Because the king of the underground is nothing if not patient. Hello doctor. Code Gray. The man on the other line speaks. Yes, that's correct. Thank you. Goodbye. He supposes Hisashi needs to go abroad for now. Inko's backpack weighs heavy on her shoulders. She only had a few hours while Hisashi / All for One was out to figure out what the most important things to bring were. Luckily she was never the kind of person with a lot of material attachment. So with her she brought her vigilante equipment, diaries and some pictures. It wasn't much but it made her feel better about this whole thing. As she mulls over the past week she finds herself incredibly grateful for her civilian job giving her a few days off. Her boyfriend may have turned out to be a mass murderer, but at least she has paid leave. Small victories. She reaches her destination with a sigh of relief. She walks up the stairs of the apartment complex like she's done hundreds of times before. She reaches door 205 and knocks loudly, she knows it wouldn't be heard otherwise. From outside she hears thundering footsteps and pities the downstairs neighbor, scratch that Inko pities all of their neighbors. Mitsuki Bakugu opens the door with a bang. W. Inko. In a second Inko is being dragged in by her ear by the loud blonde woman. Owl Mitsuki, she whines, even though it's not painful it's more about the principle of it. And she won't say it but Inko has missed her aggressive nature. It's comforting in a weird way. Like being taken back to high school. I've missed you, you dumb beach. Where have you been? Actually she scans the green-haired woman and spots the backpack. Why are you here? I love you and all but what the F? Inko sweats. It's a long story, you probably have a lot going on and I don't really want to intrude. You know I could just go, actually that'd probably be best. Goodbye Mitsuki, she rambles while turning around to head out the door. Mitsuki points to the couch. Seat. Inko sets her backpack down sheepishly and complies. Explain yourself. I'm Permanente. Mitsuki's eyes widen. It's Hisashi's. She winces at the blonde woman's volume. Holy dash. He can't know. That's the most important part of this whole deal. Hisashi must know nothing of her baby. What the F Inko? Mitsuki screeches in a very Mitsuki manner. What happened between you, why can't he know? Inko sighs and settles on a half-truth to tell her. Hisashi is a dangerous man. Both me and my baby would be in danger. Inko looks up at her friend with teary eyes, feeling a heavy amount of guilt for not telling her the full story. Oh, Mitsuki murmurs in an uncharacteristically soft tone. Okay. You'll stay in the guest room. Well, figure this out. Then she adds in a darker tone, and if that son of a beach tries anything he'll have me to deal with. Inko smiles softly at the idea that Mitsuki would beat up the king of the underground for her. Honestly she wouldn't put it past her. Thank you. She says through tears. Of course. We're a team, she holds out her arm for a fist bump, which Inko shakily meets. Plus, you're Vigilante, I'm Vigilante, we'll raise our brats together like we've always planned. That's right. Somehow in all the chaos Inko had forgotten that the Bakugas were expecting a kid. Are you sure you should be calling our kids brats? We haven't even met them. Oh, trust me, if they're anything like us, they'll be brats, she smirks as she hands Inko a tissue to wipe her tears. We were quite a handful, weren't we? Inko chuckles wetly. Demonstrate. Mitsuki laughs. Around 8 months later, Izuku Midoriya was born crying. Knowing her family tree, Inko isn't surprised in the slightest. Midoriyas are criers after all. And Izuku was a Midoriya from head to toe. He had brilliant green eyes and dark green hair. Inko did notice some similarities between him and Hisashi, like his cute freckles and curly hair. Don't think about him, Inko. Katsuki Bakugo was born screaming a few months prior. Again, Inko is not surprised. She does pity Masaru a bit though with all the yelling that will take place at their apartment. But I guess he knew what he signed up for, she thinks with a smile. Inko had moved out of the Bakugo's place a few months before. Luckily there was an empty apartment just above the Bakugo, so it was an easy move. Inko had gotten herself settled and bought as many baby supplies as she could afford. She'll be honest, without a second income things were stretched a little tight. But with her full-time job and quitting her vigilante duties she was able to make it work. But you know what? She felt good. No, she felt great. Hisashi hadn't attempted to contact her thankfully, and with her vigilante schedule she was all too used to not getting enough sleep. Besides, she had a baby. A sweet, adorable baby boy that she would do anything for. And that was enough for her. For years later, Izuku was a happy little kid. It was like he was always either laughing or crying and there was no in-between. But Inko adored that about him. He was so bright and lively. Mama, mama, guess who I am? He squeals with his little fingers in his hair to resemble All Might. His obsession with him had begun about a year ago and it shows no signs of stopping. Oh my, is that you, All Might? She gasps with a smile. Are you here to save the day? I am here. He exclaims with a smile. The kid was starstruck when she explained heroes, wanting nothing more than to be exactly like them. At that moment the youngest Bakugo barged in. Hey Izuku, wanna play heroes? Izuku had forgotten his All Might impression the second his friend came in. Yeah, let's go. He jumps up to greet Katsuki. Make sure you're back before dinner, Izuku. Oh, and Katsuki honey, could you tell your mom thank you for the sugar she lent us yesterday? She asked. Yeah, sure. Comes the gruff reply that one normally wouldn't expect from a 4-year-old. But Inko grins knowing that it's the best she's going to get from the kid. Can I be All Might this time? Is the last thing she hears before the boys fade from earshot. Inko smiles at the domesticity of it all. She's always wanted this life, and although she wishes Hisashi, her Hisashi not all for one, could be here for this, it's alright. Because she has Izuku. And that's all she'll ever need. 1 year later. Hey Deku. A small blonde boy yells after his friend. That's mean, Kakin, don't call me that. Izuku protests. Katsuki scoffs and crosses his arms. Well, until you get your quirk, that's what you are. Just watch, I'll get an amazing quirk. Izuku exclaims a bit nervously. What if he doesn't get a strong quirk like Kakin did? Will he be left behind? Few better. I want some decent competition for when I become #1 hero. Katsuki yells. Truthfully, he's never not yelling. Don't worry, we'll be the Wonder Duo. Izuku says assuredly. That's a stupid name. Katsuki laughs. You're stupid, is Izuku's brilliant retort. Katsuki runs at Izuku to tackle him and the boys collapse to the ground wrestling. After a minute Katsuki comes up laughing as the winner. Haha, I am here. He yells out like All Might. The boys begin playing heroes versus villains, completely abandoning their discussion of quirks. 2 weeks later. Mama, do you think I'll get your quirk just like Kakin got Auntie's? Izuku stares up at his mom with stars in his eyes. Just like him. Maybe, you never know. Or you could even get a combination of both mine and your father's. She tells him with a grimace and she hopes that it comes across as a smile. Whoa, he murmurs before he abruptly sticks out an arm in an attempt to use his mother's telekinesis. After a few seconds he decides to add sound effects. Beer. He rumbles as he shakes his outstretched arm. She softens at his antics before a spoon comes flying at the boy. Inko instinctively attempts to use her quirk to protect him, but to her shock, and later when she thinks back on this moment, horror, it doesn't work. The spoon hits Izuku right in the cheek and clatters to the floor. Ah wow. He pouts, but only momentarily before gazing down at the spoon and gasping. Oh my god, Mama, I did it! He squeals with delight, looking up at her with sparkling emerald eyes. Mama. He grows a bit worried looking at her face. Inko's heart is racing as looks down at her hands and tries to pick up the spoon with her quirk. Nothing. She tries again, panic festering in her gut. Again it stays still. Izuku? She asks, voice cracking. Yeah, mama? Did I do something wrong? He responds, the worry painted clear on his face. Oh no, no baby, you did nothing wrong. She sits down to get to his eye level and places a hand on his cheek to reassure him. I think we should chat about something, Izu. She tries to maintain a calm composure as she tries to figure out how to tell this hero-loving, bright, appealing little boy that his father is not overseas and is, in fact, an extraordinarily powerful centuries-old villain, and that his mom lied about it. She sits on the couch and pats the cushion next to her. Welp, this is going to SCK. Do you remember what I told you about your father? Inko says calmly as she seats him on the couch. Yeah. What's wrong, mama? She gives him a smile that doesn't quite reach her eyes. Well, it seems like you have his quirk. Isn't that something? She ruffles his hair, trying her best to not scare him. But I thought he was a fire breather? He asks, tilting his head in confusion. Well, that's true, he could breathe fire, she says, keeping her voice as even as she can. But that's not all. You see, your dad was a very special man. He could take quirks from other people. And it seems like you can do the same thing. Isn't that wonderful? I can take quirks? He says, looking down at the spoon he'd grabbed from the ground. Inko nods her confirmation. And I took yours? Tears fill his eyes as he looks up at her, and she nods once more. I don't want it. He stands up. Take your quirk back, I don't want to take people's quirks. Izuku yells, I want to have my own. Inko sighs lightly. I know you don't want this, kiddo. But this is how quirks work. It's not up to us. She wraps her arms around the tearful boy. If it makes you feel better, your father could also return quirks. And if it's too much, that's okay, but do you want to try returning my quirk to me? As much as the curiosity is burning her up inside, she doesn't want him to overexert himself. There's always tomorrow after all. I'll try, mama, he says with a determined look on his tiny face. He grabs her hand and twists up his face in concentration. It's adorable, and if the situation were any different, Inko would After a few seconds, Inko feels a familiar feeling in her gut. Like a puzzle piece fitting in right where it should. She tries to use her quirk, and the spoon clenched in Izuku's hand comes flying towards her, and she sighs in relief. So he can return them too. She smiles softly and says, You did it, Izuku. You have a wonderful quirk. Wonderful quirk. Izuku mutters to himself. He doesn't believe me. You know what I always say, Izu? It's not the quirk that makes a hero, she points to his chest, it's their heart. And you, my darling boy, have the most heroic heart I've ever seen. Izuku looks up and sniffles before sobbing. He's always had a penchant for waterworks just like his mom. She hugs him tightly as a few tears fall down her face. You'll be the best hero one day, Izu, she says through her sobs. She prays to All Might that he believes her. And, Inko pauses, unsure if she wants to go through with this. I also want to come clean about something. Your father isn't in America. What? Izuku says, his eyebrows wrinkling with confusion. He's not. He has tears forming in his eyes again, and Inko regrets every time that stupid, he's working abroad, excuse left her mouth. No honey, I'm afraid not. I'm so sorry I lied to you. He's a dangerous man, okay? And I want to keep you safe. Inko rubs her son's back as she explains. Izuku sits there silent for a painful amount of time. Oh God, she hopes she didn't scar him for life. Did he not want me? Because I'm a quirk thief like him? His voice cracking as he asks, and Inko feels her heart squeeze. Oh no. That's not it at all. Inko takes Izuku's hands and looks into his teary eyes. You are the most strong, brilliant, and kind kid in the entire world. She speaks with all the conviction in her heart, trying to show him how incredible he is to her. And your father would be lucky to even glance in your direction. She taps his nose when she says this, but he's not safe to be around. So I ran away when I was PRGing in tea with you. He doesn't even know I exist. Izuku pieces together as his eyes widen. And that's what keeps you safe. Inko nods, feeling her stomach twist in guilt. Izuku stayed up late that night, thinking about his mom, his dad, and most importantly, his quirk. How can it be possible for a quirk to steal other quirks? That's wrong. That's evil. He supposed that's what made his dad so bad. He's a thief. Izuku doesn't want to be a thief. Izuku wants to be a hero. The Midoriya shed a lot of tears that night. A week later, the two of them go to the doctor with a plan. To get a quirkless diagnosis. Inko almost feels bad for the amount of lies Izuku will have to tell during his life, but she also knows that this is the best course of action. The moment someone realizes her son has an impossible quirk, who knows what'll happen. Whether it be doctors poking and prodding, his father coming back into the picture, or just plain old discrimination. Either way, this is what has to happen. When they do an x-ray that shows that he doesn't have a double toe joint, both he and Inko act surprised. The doctor gives them a predictable explanation of how it's probably dormant, and most likely, will never manifest. And after 15 minutes of acting and a few fake tears, Izuku has his diagnosis. On the ride home, Izuku is quiet, and Inko wonders if she's done the wrong thing. 2 days later. The school bell rings, an irritating sound that makes Izuku's head hurt. A rush of his classmates rush into the building with an incredible amount of enthusiasm that Izuku can't bring himself to match. Not today, at least. When he goes to sit down at his desk next to Kachin's, he realizes that a kid with dragon wings is sitting in his spot. He's talking to Kakin and laughing obnoxiously. Izuku feels a pang of jealousy go through his heart. He decides to sit behind Kakin instead. "Your quirk is so cool, Bakugo," the seat thief exclaimed. "I know, right? I'm right on track to beat All Might." Kakin brags haughtily. "Beat All Might? You're cool and all, but I don't think anyone can do that," the winged boy mumbles. "Who says I can't? I'll beat everyone up. Then you'll see you extra." Kakin huffs angrily, crossing his arms. "Yeah, of course he can. He's Kakin and he's amazing." Izuku stands up at his seat, frowning at the boy. The two of them turn to Izuku, and the boy with wings laughs in his face. "How what do you know? You're just a weak, quirkless nobody." "Everyone knows, don't they?" Izuku turns to Kakin with a small flicker of hope in his chest. "He'll help me, right? We're friends, right?" Kakin looks in Izuku's eyes. He seems to falter for a moment. "That's strange." Kakin doesn't hesitate, it's not like him. After a few seconds, Kakin scowls at him. "The extra's right, I don't need your help, Deku." Izuku's heart sinks to his stomach as the hope of keeping his one friend is squashed. "I thought dash." "Izuku." The teacher walked into the classroom. "Please sit down and stop distracting your classmates." The rest of the class giggles at his stupidity as Izuku Deku lowers himself into his chair, humiliation written clear on his face. "Quirkless loser. He's pathetic." His classmates whisper, loud enough for him to hear them all. "Ah, this is how it's going to be." He wishes he could sink into the ground. 4 years later. "I'm home." Izuku calls from the door as he takes off his shoes. He faintly hears the TV from the living room, but there's no response. "Mom?" he shouts, worry seeping into his tone. "I'm in here, honey." His mom's voice wavers and he hurries to ask what's wrong. He sees her seated on the couch, clenching a pillow close to her chest. Her eyes don't leave the All Might fight on TV. "What's this? Is it live?" Inko nods in response. Her brows are furrowed as she grabs his arm and pulls him to the couch. "Don't worry, Mama, All Might be fine. He always is." Izuku flexes his arms to try to cheer her up. She turns to him, the fear clear in her bright green eyes. "Why, I suppose you're right." She attempts a feeble smile. "So?" Izuku chirps as he gets settled on the couch. "Who's he fighting this time?" Inko's mouth opens a touch before closing again. "Who is it, Mom?" She takes a deep, shaky breath. "The reporters say that no one knows who it is." "Oh, that's interesting, Dash." Izuku smiles cheerily. "But I think it's your father," she confesses as a tear falls down her cheek. She turns to Izuku, who becomes very still. "Aizu, please say something?" The 9-year-old hesitates for a moment before turning to the TV. "All Might has to win then." Inko puts her arm around the small boy and sniffles. "He will, kiddo, don't you worry." She's conflicted though. Obviously All Might needs to win, for the good of Japan. But, what will happen to Hisashi? Her Hisashi. Inko races into the school building, heart racing in her chest and head full of fog. She spots her son sitting on a wooden bench outside of the main office. He meets her eyes and then stares at the ground. "Oh, my sweet baby. What happened, honey?" She rushes to his side, seeing the cast on his right arm. The vice principal comes out from the office and says, "He instigated a fight at school today. We've discussed the incident with others involved, and we think a week's suspension is a fair punishment." What? No, there's some confusion here. Izuku would never start a fight, he's a sweet boy. He smirks in an eerie way and Inko is wondering how on earth a man so cruel became the vice principal. "I'm afraid you're the only one who's confused. Izuku here has violent tendencies." "Violent tendencies from Hisashi perhaps?" "Don't be silly, Inko, this is the Izuku we're talking about. He's always starting things that he can't handle." Inko's frown changes from worried to angry. "Who is this man and why is he speaking about my son like he knows him? I mean, surely you've noticed how hurt he gets from being too reckless." The man finishes his spiel and Inko pauses. "What? Has Izuku been getting hurt regularly?" "What are yo dash? It's my fault I started the fight. I accept the suspension, we should just go," Izuku interrupts. He's looking at his shoes and Inko can tell from his voice that he's holding back tears. This boy is lying. Inko doesn't know why, but she supposes that the reason can wait. Fine. We'll go. But I'm not letting this be. You, sir? She points to the vice principal. She searches her mind for an appropriate insult for the man. A mean person. Dimon, she used to be quicker on her feet with these sorts of things. She turns abruptly and storms out with her purse in hand. In the car ride home, Izuku can't stop tapping his leg on the floor of the car. He knows that he's going to have to fess up sooner or later. He figures he might as well get it over with. Mom? She doesn't tear her eyes away from the road. Yes, sweetie? Am I in trouble? Mom pauses for a moment. Do you need to be? I don't know. I didn't think it was bad when I did it, but everyone else seems to disagree. She hums. That's what I figured. I know you, kiddo. You aren't the kind of person to start fights. And stop me if I'm wrong, but something tells me you were defending someone. Sobs rack through Izuku's chest. Why? He's so grateful that she knows the truth. There was this kid they were pie-picking on. He hears his mom sniffle from the driver's seat. That's the hero I know. She smiles through teary eyes. But can I ask you something? Sure. Izuku says, still crying a little. Why didn't you use your quirk? In those kinds of situations it's better to protect yourself first. Inko turns to him. His mouth is open a little and he's hesitating to tell her something. But I don't want to steal their quirks, even if I can give them back, he asks. Oh honey, it's not stealing, it's self-defense. Like, okay, you know about that recent case on the news about the woman who used her quirk against her abusive husband? Yeah. Did she do something wrong? No. He responds immediately, he was hurting her. And those kids were hurting you. I need you to listen to me, Izuku Midoriya. He turns to her as she says, I want you to promise me that you will use your quirk if the need arises. I don't want you to get hurt again. Izuku doesn't respond. Aizu? Well, if I use it, what's the point of the quirkless diagnosis? Well, I've always thought of the diagnosis as a safety net. Concrete proof to anybody who's suspicious. But even if you do use your quirk, nobody would realize. Nobody thinks your kind of quirk even exists and they wouldn't suspect you. She looks at him. It's okay to use your quirk every now and then. It doesn't make you a bad person and it doesn't make you a thief. So, can you promise me? Izuku turns that over in his head for a minute. I promise, he tells her. She lets out an audible sigh of relief. Thank you, Aizu. 2 days later. Inko hasn't talked to Izuku about the incident since the drive home a few days ago. But after some thinking she's reached a decision. He won't be going back to that school. She thinks he'll be happy about leaving, but she wants to make sure, so she knocks on his door 1, 2, 3 times. Come in, he calls, so she opens the door. She looks at her son. His arm is still in a cast and it makes her so sad. Say, what do you think about opening a cafe? He tilts his head, confused by the sudden question. Huh? What do you mean? She sits at the edge of his bed and looks at him with a determined smile. I've always wanted to open a coffee shop, you know? And there's a place for sale about 15 minutes away. There's even an apartment above it for a few people to live in. Izuku's eyes go wide and he starts nodding fervently. We'd need to take you out of Aldera. She glances at him to gauge his reaction to the proposition. That's fine. Leaving Aldera is fine. He says quickly and she smiles sadly. Things aren't good at Aldera at all, are they? My poor sweet boy. You'd like it? She wants to make sure before uprooting pretty much his whole life. Yeah. He exclaims, it could even be a cat cafe. He smiles just like he did. That's a brilliant idea. We'll have lots of cats. She strokes her hand on his cheek. And, if you want to, you could try online school when school starts up again. I know sometimes being in a school building is difficult. So if you ever want to try something else, know you can talk to me. Okay, baby? Actually, I think I'd really like online school. He smiles at her. Okay, hun. We'll do that. She gets up to leave. Hey, Mom. She turns to look at him. Yes, honey? She asks. Thanks. Of course. Love you, Han. Love you too. She shuts the door and enters her room. She steps into her closet and grabs a cardboard box under a heap of clothes. She opens it gingerly and looks at all the pictures inside of it. She used to love Polaroids when she was in her early 20s, and it was proven by the dozens of images of her with Hisashi. She never could get rid of them even a decade later. It's a bad idea to keep them, she knows. But she could never stop loving him. Not fully anyway. She sighs as she wipes the dust off of their faces in the photo. She looks overjoyed. Unburdened. Inko wonders, as she has many times before, what would have happened if she didn't meet with Jiren. She could have discovered her PRGNCY with him. What would he have said? What would he have done? Would she have died then? Or perhaps his love for her was real. If that was true, the Hisashi she knew would have been an excellent father. It's wishful thinking, she knows. But she can still wish. 1 month later. Aiza, the moving van's here. Inko yells up to him. She hears a distant, "I'll be there in a sec," from their apartment. She shakes her head a bit, laughing to herself. That boy is always a touch frazzled. He rushes outside with a box full of All Might memorabilia. She smiles as she takes it from him to put in the van. Isn't this the box of merch you have multiples of? His grin tells her everything she needs to know. Okay, but this is going in your room. We can't have too much hero merch in the cafe. I know, I just couldn't bring myself to give these away. She smiles and ruffles his hair. Well, if that's it, then let's get this show on the road, she exclaims. Yeah. Izuku bounces on the ball of his feet. 1 month later. It takes them a while to get fully and completely settled into the apartment above the cafe. It's a busy time filled with paperwork and leases, but by the end of it all Izuku seems happier. And that's all Inko really wanted with this move. Just to see him smile a little more. Inko's is grateful for the money from her parents' wills. While the cafe was pretty cheap, it was still a building, and that takes quite a bit of money. Plus there's the cats. Oh my god, the cats. Who knew that having 6 cats wasn't cheap? She supposes she should have figured that though. Hey, check this out. Izuku calls from the back of the cafe. They just finished some renovations and Izuku was searching for the best places for hide and seek. What's up, Han? She asks while wiping some extra flour off of her face. She was currently receiving a lot of deliveries for the cafe. She tries to look for him, but he's nowhere to be found. The vents are huge here. Izuku yells from above and Inko laughs. Are you sure that's safe? I don't want you to get hurt or lost. She warns him. Don't worry, it's super sturdy. He tells her, but she's still skeptical. Ichim, how about you get out of there for now? I want to make sure before you hang out there. Ah. He whines as a vent opens above a counter. He climbs out and hops down to the counter. I know, but I want to see this for myself. She smiles at him. Is this the best idea? Probably not. But it's better if she tests this rather than her 10-year-old son. And sue her if a part of her misses her reckless vigilante days. Awesome. Izuku is hyped to see his mom do something exciting. She climbs onto the counter and pulls herself into the vent. She's shocked at the size and the cleanliness. She's been in many vents in her youth and this is a nice one. And she can climb through it very easily. Inko is not a small woman, so it's reassuring to her to know that it's a safe place to be. She calls down to Izuku, "You found a great place, kiddo." I know, right? He exclaims, and even without seeing him Inko can tell he's beaming. She searches the rest of the vent system and once she's satisfied that it's sturdy she exits and smiles at her son. It's safe, go nuts. Awesome. He yells. Be safe though. She tells him, it's a loop so you can't get lost, but I want you to be smart about this. Mum, yes mum. He shouts in a mock salad. She laughs as he climbs back in the vent and she's reminded of when she was young and silly. It's a nice feeling to watch her son do similar things to what she did a few decades ago. She just hopes he doesn't become a vigilante. Ah, can you imagine? 1 month later. Inko sighs a breath of relief looking at the sign above the cafe. Evergreen, cats and coffee. She thinks that sums their business up pretty well. It's officially open for business starting. Inko looks at her watch, 5 minutes ago. She just used the little blackboard she got to put on the sidewalk for the very first time and she felt satisfied. She walked in and saw Izuku pacing around the back. He was anxious for customers to come and she wouldn't tell him, but she was pretty nervous too. Luckily, before she could get too wrapped up in her own head, the door rang, indicating a customer. She heads behind the counter and turns her charm up to the max. Hello, what can I get for you? A man decked out in silvery armor smiles back at her. Hi ma'am, could I get a chai tea latte and a black coffee? Inko nods before she starts to make the drinks. She's thankful she had a barista job in her teens. My little brother seems to think black coffee is the most sophisticated thing you can drink. The man laughs good-naturedly, but personally I find it much too bitter. Ah, that's adorable. Inko beams. How old is your brother? She asks while waiting for the drinks to be done. He's 10, but I think in his mind he's 54. He's the type to tell other kids to get off his lawn. Oh, that's so amusing, kids can do the silliest things. She chuckles as she hands him the drinks and his change. I actually have a 10-year-old son myself. Oh, that's wonderful. It must be fun for a kid to be in a cat cafe. He says while putting his change away. The cats were his idea even. He's such a smart boy. That's sweet. He smiles before wandering towards the door. Have a nice day, ma'am. You too, she calls out after him before turning to Izuku, who was hiding in the back. We got our first customer. She squeals happily. And it was Ingenium. Izuku says with his eyes wide and filled with awe. Inko tilts her head. Oh? Who's that? Only the fastest pro hero ever. Izuku exclaims before running to grab his notebook from the back. He drinks chai tea lattes. I've got to write this down? Inko smiles. Yeah, this was a good decision. A few months later. For the most part, Izuku had learned the ropes of working in the cafe. He was starting to be able to recognize regulars, he knew how to close up, and he finally mastered all of the various machinery. But maybe I got too comfortable. A small voice says in the back of his head. It was a Thursday in April. Izuku had just turned 11 a few days ago and Mom had gone to the corner store to pick up some sugar for the cafe. It was relatively quiet, so Izuku had taken to watching villain fights on TV. He was having a great day until he saw the camera pan to the building the Endeavor had just set on fire to kill the villain. He chewed on his lip, anxiously mentally scolding Endeavor's cruel and reckless methods. But then his heart clenched when he looked closer. Was that the store Mom went to? It couldn't be right? He turns the TV to mute and listens carefully. Were those sirens? He dashes out of the store, turning the sign to closed. As he leaves, he runs as fast as he can until he sees smoke rising from a block away. No. No, 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 no. Absolutely not. When he reaches the building, Endeavor has already left and the paramedics were wheeling out a body. Oh God, oh God, oh God. He runs over and sighs in relief when he recognizes the villain from the TV. But he's not reassured yet. What if she's stuck in the building? He ducks under the police tape, barely hearing the heroes who have since gathered yelling at him to stop. He feels a hand land on his shoulder. Hey kid, you really can't be in here. He looks up at the man with long dark hair and a gray scarf. Mom's in there? I have to dash. He points to the rubble, trying to get his point across. The man looks at him with pity in his eyes. I'm so sorry. Everyone who was in there died. He hears the man talking more, but he's not listening. He's wrong. He has to be. A stupid fire wouldn't, Mom wouldn't, she wouldn't die from something like that. No, she's strong. Strong and capable. She'll come out of the building with maybe a few scrapes and she'll hug him tightly. It'll be fine. He runs back to the cafe, ignoring the man calling after him. Maybe Mom didn't make it to the store, maybe she's at home. Yeah, that's what's happened. As she'll be worried that I ran off. He thinks in a daze. He reaches the cafe, but his mom is not there. 3 years later. Helios. The grumpy man walks across the rooftop to him. Heya Eraser. Helios gives him a friendly wave. Got any trigger info for me? You know I can't just give out classified information, you know? Of course. But if you happen to misplace a case file, who can blame you? God knows you don't get enough sleep. Maybe you got a little sleep deprived and carless. Helios shakes a brown paper bag. File for a pastry. Deal's a deal. Shoyuta huffs but hands over the file nevertheless. This is not going to be a habit. Sir. Whatever helps you sleep at night. Helios snickers. It's been almost 3 years since he took up his mom's mantle. Imagine his surprise finding out his sweet mother was a badass vigilante. And discovering it from her diaries of all things. The first few months of patrolling the neighborhood were pretty rough. He had no training whatsoever, so his only move was taking his opponent's quirks. It worked surprisingly well until one guy had a gun. That wasn't fun. But out of nowhere came Eraserhead. From then on they've met up routinely to exchange information, baked goods and other good stuff. Say, what do you do? Aizawa asks as he eats the treat. Not many vigilantes are expert bakers in their free time. It's just a little something I've picked up over time. Helios shrugs. It's a tasty hobby, isn't it? You're never going to tell me anything about your life, are you? Of course not. I'll have you know I'm not an amateur. He says. Because experts hang out and give snacks to the people trying to capture them. Helios laughs and stands up. No, it's what nice people do. You could learn a few things from me, in fact. Eraser scoffs. Have a good night, Helios. Later. Helios leaves to run across the rooftops looking for trouble until the sun comes up. 2 hours later. Izuku watches the men from the roof he's on. They seem agitated and suspicious. Izuku sighs to himself. It was shaping up to be a quiet night, but he supposes that peace just isn't in the cards for him. When he sees one of the men pull out a gun, he decides he better step in. He hops off the roof and swiftly kicks the gun out of the guy's hand. In a few quick moves, 2 of the 3 men are knocked out on the ground. He manages to get behind the last guy and gives him a satisfying chop in the neck. Or at least it should have been satisfying, because this guy didn't go down like he should have. Oh no. The guy is, as it turns out, made out of steel. Isn't that just great? He thinks through gritted teeth. He chuckles nervously and backs away with his hands up as the guy turns around to glare at him. You know I'm actually a pacifist. He bolts out of the alley and runs headfirst into Mount Lady. Isn't she a daytime hero? Why is she here? Will her strength work on the steel guy? Stop mumbling and focus, Helios. Mount Lady analyzes the situation quickly, and within seconds the steel man is unconscious on the ground. She then turns to Izuku. Hey Helios, I figured you could use a hand. She smiles. Ah, right, thank you very much, ma'am. He bows to her. I tried to knock him out, but then, you saw steel hat. He chuckles nervously. Can I get your autograph? He's seen her on TV dozens of times, but this is the first time he's meeting her face to face. Oh, sure thing. She grabs a piece of paper and a pen from her pocket. I have to admit I didn't expect the notorious Helios to ask for my autograph, she says as she signs it. Izuku's brow furrows as he takes the paper. Notorious? I just help out a bit here and there. Anyways, aren't you a daytime hero, ma'am? I think helping out here and there is an understatement. But yes, I'm normally patrolling in the day, I just got called in as a favor. She sighs sadly. Trigger is literally everywhere and it's wrecking my work-life balance. Helios laughs. I hear that. Oh my god, he's having small talk with Mount Lady. Well, thank you so much for the autograph. I've gotta run, have a good night. Why, oh they're gone. She sighs. I really did want to chat more. The next morning, Izuku wakes to his 5 o'clock alarm. He groans as he gets out of bed. He does some mental math, 4.5 hours of sleep last night. That's actually pretty good, he hums in satisfaction. He pulls on his work apron and walks down the steps to the cafe. Hey kiddies. He calls and he hears the sound of 24 paws scampering across the wooden floor, and he sees Artemis, a small black cat with a few spots of white, wrestling with Ares, an orange cat like they always do. Hey, no cat fights, he scolds them while smiling at his own pun. He fills their bowls and grabs a bagel from the back for himself. While eating his breakfast he remembers to grab the autograph he got last night from Mount Lady. He knows he can't put it up for display like he does with the other autographs he collects using his civilian persona, but he'll still treasure it. He starts up the cafe, turning on lights, whisking batter and rearing up the machines. After he's settled in he decides to open a bit early. What's the harm in a little extra business after all? He turns on some indie pop to make the place homey. The first customer of the day is always the same. At 6:06 like clockwork, pro hero Eraserhead comes in for a black coffee. It's quite amusing to Izuku to watch the grumpy man interact with both of his personas only hours apart. The bell rings telling him it's 6:06. Hey kid, the man says while rubbing his eyes. Hey Aizawa. Late night? He asks even though he knows. You could say that again. I tell you what, if you ever come across a snarky vigilante dressed in green and yellow, give them a scolding for me, will ya? Izuku chuckles at the irony. I'll do that, sir. I take it Helios is being a heathen again? When are they not, say? Am I a nice person? Aizawa asks. Izuku snorts, reminded of his comment to the man only hours before, an angel. He says sarcastically. Ah. Aizawa says dryly, have a good day, kid. You too, old man. Don't expel too many students today. Aizawa sighs. You ask too much of me, he says as he leaves. During the typical midday lull Izuku decides to pull out his computer and start some online lessons. He's gotten through around 2 years of high school lessons in the last 10 months, so it's not like he's behind or anything. It feels good to learn and to do something productive. As he works on a statistics worksheet he hears the bell ring, so he closes his laptop. Hello, what can I get for you? He smiles at the customer. But he's a bit surprised when the person he greets falls flat on their face. Was it something I said? He gets out from behind the counter and gently flips them over to check their pulse. Oh my god, it's a knife. A woman from a booth near the window screams. Yup, that's a knife all right. The girl with the knife sticking out of her stomach mumbles and tries to move a little to no avail. She's wearing a school uniform and her blonde hair is in buns. No, hospital. Don't call dash, and she fainted. Fantastic. Hestia, a reddish-orange cat, gently pads the girl in a feeble attempt to wake her up. He grabs a tablecloth from the kitchen and looks at the wound. Okay, it's fine. This is fine. In a split second he pulls the knife out, ignoring the screams of his customers. Sure, he feels a bit bad for traumatizing them, but he figures this is more important at the moment. Ares goes to lick the unconscious girl's wounds and Izuku has to push the rowdy cat out of the way in order to help the girl. He sees some people reaching for their phones and he decides the girl probably has a good reason for not wanting the hospital. Please don't call the police, I'll handle this, you guys don't need to worry. He asks, or more accurately begs them. He holds pressure to the wound using the cloth and stays there for a while. While holding the white now red cloth to the wound, he looks up to his customers. You can leave if you want. Or stay if you don't mind BLD, I guess. I don't, what do I dash, he rambles on, trying to figure out what to tell the shell-shocked civilians. He thinks he sees some people recording, but honestly he's too frazzled to think about that right now. I can't have one normal day, can I? He laughs manically while checking on the girl's wound. While most people have run out, a few of them are still staring at the scene wide-eyed. He points at a blonde man with green eyes and a ridiculous mustache. Can you hold steady pressure? I need to do something, but I can't do both at once. He nods quickly, and Izuku is relieved that at least one person in the cafe has a good head on their shoulders. He cleans a table in the back quickly and grabs the first aid kit from the closet. He rushes back out to the main area and asks the man to help him bring the girl to the table. With the two of them, they're able to handle the situation relatively well. Within half an hour, the girl is stitched up and coming around. She still looks fairly sickly, which is to be expected after a literal stab wound. But Izuku is just grateful she's alive. The dining area looks like a murder scene, but hey, at least she didn't bleed all over the nice carpeted section. That's a win in Izuku's book. Himiko Toga has a massive ache in her abdomen. What the fuck, she hisses while clenching her sore stomach. Oh, you're awake, a perky voice sounds from behind her. She looks at the green-haired boy with adorable freckles up and down. Who are you? Do you like BLD? Those, in her opinion, are the important questions when meeting new people. Izuku Midoriya, and not particularly. He raises his hand to shake, which she takes tentatively. She notices a group of cats looking at her curiously. Ah. The boy sees her staring at the cats and explains, sorry, these are my cats. Minus Hades, but he's probably hiding somewhere around here. His head turns sharply to the small space underneath the couch. There he is. Izuku leans down and picks up a black cat that does not look happy to be pulled out from his hiding place. Where am I? She asks, looking around her surroundings. She doesn't recognize where she is. Evergreen cafe? Well, to be more specific, the apartment above the cafe. You came in all bloody and very stabbed, so I stitched you up. He says casually whilst petting the grumpy black cat. Thank you? You didn't call the police, did you? She panics momentarily. She has a pocket full of stolen cash and a few assaults on record. Behind bars is the last place she wants to be while recovering. No, that was your last request before you promptly passed out. No, police. He imitates her injury-induced muttering. Speaking of, why didn't you want the police? You were seriously injured. His eyes flash with something akin to knowledge or perhaps understanding. She doesn't reply, so he continues. You know Evergreen is welcome to all. Heroes, vigilantes, he pauses for a moment. Even some morally gray villains. If that helps you feel comfortable, I mean. She studies the boy. He can't be more than 14. Why is he opening his door to dangerous people? It does actually. She smiles toothily at him and he sees her sharp fangs. Is he scared? Her stomach clenches in preparation for him to inevitably kick her out when he realizes she's dangerous. Who do you have a BLD quirk? That's so cool. Does that have something to do with why you were stabbed? Your fangs are so sharp, that's really interesting. I bet biting your tongue is really painful though. I'm so sorry, I know my rambling can be creepy. He scratches the back of his neck looking ashamed. Oh, it's okay. I do have a BLD quirk. She pauses, waiting for him to recoil in disgust or maybe even fear. But he doesn't. He just smiles and nods, waiting for her to continue. It's nice. I didn't get stabbed because of my quirk though, I just got a little careless with my knife. And yes, biting my tongue is extraordinarily painful. She chuckles at the silly question that she'd never even considered. That's fascinating. Midoriya smiles again, and if you have somewhere to go, that's fine, but I'd really like to keep you here for at least a few days so your wound can heal correctly. Oh, well, I don't really have anywhere I can go, so I guess it's fine, but why do you care? Why do you care about a worthless villain? Midoriya laughs like it's a ridiculous question. Because you're a customer. Caring is what I do. All my customers say I'm a worrywart. And after spending quite a bit of time stitching you up, I feel like I should make sure I didn't F up and give you an infection. Toga chuckles at this a bit. Well, I suppose staying for a few days wouldn't be the worst idea. When was the last time someone cared about her after knowing her quirk? Has that ever happened to her before? She looks down as a white cat circles her. It's intimidating, which is strange considering it's just a cat. Don't bother our guest Aphrodite. Midoriya quietly scolds the cat and Himiko considers what it would be like to hang out here for a while. All right, I guess I'll stick around, she concedes and Midoriya beams. It's like sunshine, she decides. The wind rushes through Aizawa's hair as he sits perched on top of a tall rooftop. He glances down at his watch before scowling slightly. They're late. But he knows Helios, they can take care of themselves. Probably. He sits waiting for a while longer before he catches a glimpse of a shadowy figure fast approaching. The worry leaves his body in a rush and he sighs in relief. Hey hey. Helios rushes towards the man despite being a little out of breath. They hold up a paper bag and Aizawa can smell the cinnamon from where he's sitting. You're late. Why? He asks as he pulls out a warm cinnamon bagel and skeptically takes a bite. Oh, it's really good. No small talk eraser? Not even a hello. Keep up the attitude and I'll think you're using me for my food. Helios complains melodramatically before responding to Aizawa's question. I made a friend. Aizawa laughs dryly. Oh really? I'll have you know I'm wonderful company. Helios says half offended. I'm just not sure who could handle all of your... He gestures to the vigilante as he trails off. Helios scowls at the man. You just pointed to all of me. That I did. So anyways, what about this new friend? Well, she's going to drive living expenses through the roof. Helios sighs. She's ruined 4 cabinets within 48 hours. Aizawa looks at the vigilante. How on earth does that happen? Knives. They say like it explains everything. That, okay, you know what, fine. Aizawa decides to give it up. So how's the patrol going tonight? He returns to talking about work, since Helios's personal life is a mystery wrapped in a mystery that everyone is too terrified to unpack. Meh, I saw Liars again. He was going on and on about world domination. Aizawa hums an affirmation. Yeah, he never really gives up, does he? No, he doesn't. He even got his hands on some trigger dash. Helios sees Aizawa stiffen, so they go to reassure him. Don't worry, I dealt with him and he's in police custody. You fought Liars while he was on trigger by yourself? He asks in shock. Helios is good. Aizawa knows that better than most, and Liars isn't the most dangerous villain, but him with trigger is a fearsome combo. Did Helios really deal with him alone? Helios gets a bit nervous at Aizawa's disbelief. I mean, yeah? It was fine really, and I have my knives, so if it went really south it wouldn't have been that dangerous. Really, he's just dash. Helios rambles on and Aizawa looks at the vigilante. They're small, wearing a relatively simple green costume with gold embellishments. They were active for 6 or 7 years before disappearing for more than a decade. And then in a split second they were back. Why aren't you a hero? Aizawa cuts off Helios's muttering. Helios opens their mouth to answer and Aizawa continues, and I want a real answer this time. No excuses. Speak. Helios sits for a moment contemplating what to tell the hero. Aizawa just hopes they trust him enough to be honest. It's not time. They say after a moment, if the time comes, I might make changes. But it's not time. Not yet. The vigilante looks at Aizawa, and even though he can't see their face he knows they're smiling sadly under the mask. But still it's better than the lies they've spouted in the past. It's a truthful answer. A really vague one, but an answer nonetheless. When's the time? You've been fighting on and off for almost 20 years. Helios is getting famous, it's the perfect time, I don't understand. Aizawa knows he's not going to get a clear answer, but he can't help but ask. I'm sure you could get a license easily with your experience. Helios stands up and stretches their arms back. 20 years, huh? They huff out a laugh before walking away. See you later, Aizawa. He's left sitting on the roof even more confused than before. Wait, how does Helios know his name? The next morning, Mike watches his husband pace around the living room in a panic. He gracefully takes the cup of coffee from his hand, ignoring the hiss he gets in return. Hisashi. Shoyuta looks very betrayed and Hisashi almost gives in. You're hyped up enough without coffee, Sho, what's up? You were tossing and turning all night. Yamada places the mug on the kitchen counter, and Aizawa leaps for it while shooting his husband a glare. Helios knows me. He gestures to himself like he's revealing something big. Yamada's is just confused now. Yeah, I mean you guys work together a lot. Why wouldn't they know you? No Zashi, they know me. Like Aizawa Shoyuta me. I don't know how and I don't know for how long, but my identity has been compromised. The only people who know my name are either fellow pro-heroes or insignificant civilians. A vigilante knowing is far too dangerous. He sips his coffee and sighs. Hisashi's eyes go wide for a second. Oh, okay, that isn't great. Not great? This could be disastrous. Do you know how valuable that information is in the wrong hands? Yamada wraps his arms around Aizawa's neck. Ido. I do know. But Helios isn't that kind of person. And only they know how much information is out there. Aizawa relaxes as he considers this. Now we need to get to work. I've got 70 essays I need to grade before lunch so I can't be late. Aizawa grumbles at this. Can't you just expel them or something? He can be quite whiny when he wants to be, Hisashi thinks fondly. Hisashi laughs and grabs his hand. I wish. The bell rings at 6:07 and Midoriya, the barista, frowns. What made you so late, sir? Yamada laughs as Aizawa glares at the kid. Please. You exaggerate my schedule. I don't know, sir, it's been 6:06 every day for years. Who are you and what have you done with Aizawa? The barista chuckles as he makes mixed frappuccino. Yeah, whatever. And can I get a cinnamon bagel with that? The kid gives him a look and the hero sighs in defeat as he confesses, okay fine, cinnamon bagels aren't entirely awful. Yes. The teen pumps his fist in celebration and turns to Yamada. I've been telling him for months that he would like them, but did he listen to the expert? No. He waved his hands in an exaggerated manner, but I have to know how you were finally convinced. Yamada leans down and pets his favorite cat in the cafe. Hestia was always so friendly. He didn't understand why Shoyuta always opted to hang out in the corner with Hades. A neighborhood nuisance. Aizawa sighs, not giving him any more information. The kid laughs with a glint in his eye and Aizawa decides that more small talk wouldn't kill him. So, how are the UA plans coming along? The kid lights up as he answers, really good actually. I figured that the entrance exam would be something like robots or a fake scenario. I don't think they'd have us fight real people. I think I'd be able to dash. He cuts himself off. Sorry, you probably don't want to hear my theories. I mean, you already know what it's going to be, and I suppose you couldn't tell me even if you wanted to. Aizawa's eyebrows raise as he listens to the kid ramble. He's pretty impressed with his analysis. From the moment he met the kid, he could tell that he was pretty special and he kept getting proven right. Impressive kid. I can't confirm or deny anything, but I'm sure you'll be okay. Who knows, you may even be in my class. Midoriya smiles and laughs. I think your expectations of me are a bit too high, sir, but I appreciate the encouragement. He hands the men their food and drinks. Tell Kiyama hi from me. He tells them. The men leave the cafe and Hisashi glances at Shoyuta. You want to teach him? He smirks. I do not want to teach anyone. But teaching would be a slightly less painstaking process if it was a bright kid like him. Aizawa shakes his head as he eats his bagel. Hisashi sips his coffee as he hums. Well, I hope he gets in. It's not every day a student guesses what next year's exam will be. Imagine what would happen if he met Nedzu. Oh god, the rat would be jumping for joy. Aizawa shudders at the thought. A few days later. A camera points to a cutesy latte before it pans up to a smiling girl wearing a forest green apron and holding her hands behind her back. A young boy comes from the kitchen and sighs, Toga, the knives need to stay in the kitchen. The green-haired boy holds out his hand and the blonde pouts and places a frighteningly sharp blade in his palm. DMN. The clip ends and another begins showing the same cafe backdrop. Where is the tomato sauce, Toga? Have you? Oh god. The same boy looks over to the girl and chuckles when he sees the tomato sauce smeared across her face. In the next clip you can't see anyone but the voices are recognizable. You know you can't stab him? A muffled voice starts. But why not? He's annoying, the second one complains. The final video is the boy stops the girl on her way to deliver a plate of suspiciously pink pancakes. Pig's BLD isn't needed for pancakes, Toga, he says. The compilation video ends and Aizawa has to stifle his laughter as his husband cackles at it. That kid has some questionable employees for sure. Shoyuta huffs. Tell me about it. Something tells me she's going to cause quite a bit of chaos for him. Hisashi smiles. The patrons of Evergreen Cafe have slowly but surely been getting used to the new hire. She's a little odd. But she's perky and won't actually hurt anyone. Probably. Table 5 wants cinnamon in their latte. Toga calls out to him. Got it, thanks Hime? He shouts back as he takes a new batch of muffins out of the oven and runs to the fridge in the back. Together running the cafe has been a lot smoother, despite the hiccups in the first few days. Having more hands on deck has made Izuku realize just how overworked he was. Toga is waiting on a table when the bell rings and a wiry blonde man steps into the cafe. Hi, how can I help you all? Izuku settles into his customer service voice. Something about this man is off. But despite Izuku's screaming instincts, he smiles and listens to his order. As he makes the man's order, they strike up a conversation. So what brings you to the Evergreen? Well, I've been looking for a new cafe near my new job and my new coworkers rave about this place. The man says and Izuku swells with pride. People have been raving. That's so nice. Tell your coworkers I'm flattered. He beams as he puts a lid on his drink. Well, I hope you have a good day, mister. He trails off realizing he never got his name. Atoshinori. Yagi Tashinori. A few days later. Okay, so Izuku knows he maybe isn't the most cautious person, but he thinks, impulsive idiot, is a little overkill. He got a little hurt, but he gets hurt all the time. It's not a big deal. At all. I can't believe that you just ran in there. Eraser has been ranting at him for the past 15 minutes, and in all honesty Izuku is getting bored. Yeah, I'm irresponsible, I get it, he mutters under his breath. Well, you can't keep acting like a reckless teenager. So he caught that. Screw his good hearing, Izuku thinks bitterly as he holds his sore arm. How do you know I'm not a teenager? He's in the mood to mess with the man, and there's nothing that brings Izuku more joy than knowing things other people don't. You've been active for like 2 decades, you should know better than running into an active crime scene unarmed. I wasn't unarmed. Izuku smirks under his mask. You what? I had my charming personality. Helios brags and Aizawa sighs. What? It gets me out of trouble every time. Tell that to your broken arm. Aizawa rolls his eyes. In all honesty, Midoriya's arm is mostly healed by now. He picked up an exquisite regeneration quirk about a year ago and it works incredibly fast. Before he could reassure Eraser that he was fine, a police car pulled up below them. From the rooftop, Midoriya sees a man rush out of the car as he looks around hurriedly. Curious. Really, you called the cops? He scoffs, and I thought we were besties. He sighs dramatically. The man below finally sees the two on the rooftop. Eraserhead. Thank God, I thought you were dead. Detective Naomasa Tsukachi is looking up at the pair with relief plain on his face. Izuku frowns at the newcomer. Who the hell are you? Aizawa smacks the back of Izuku's head. That's Tsukachi, don't be rude. This makes Izuku pause. Tsukachi. Where did he know that name from? Do I know you? He asks bluntly. The detective's head turns to him and his eyes widen in surprise. Helios. So I do know you. He raises his eyebrows at the man. He's usually pretty good with faces. Well, no, but I know you. My father worked on your case around 15 years ago. Something clicks into place and Izuku smiles knowingly. That's where I recognize the name from. You're Naomasa, right? He crosses his fingers that he's recalling the name correctly. That's right. He turns to Aizawa now. You didn't tell me your vigilante informant was Helios? He raises an eyebrow in his direction. Didn't realize you two were familiar with each other. He sends a suspicious glance in Izuku's direction and it sends a chill down his spine. Well, I have to run. Nice to meet you, Tsukachi. Izuku nods to the man before leaving. Tsukachi looks at Aizawa after a minute. They stand there in silence before Tsukachi breaks it. They lied. It wasn't nice to meet me. When Aizawa chuckles, Tsukachi scoffs. Yeah, laugh it up, Zawa, take pleasure in my pain. Izuku looks over the page of his mom's old diary and reads it again. Tsukachi's wife just had a baby. I can barely believe it. His name is Naomasa and I think he's the cutest thing ever. I begged Tsukachi to let me meet him, but he's all, you're a wanted vigilante? Are you stupid? He's so boring, honestly. When he first found her old journals after her death, it threw him for a loop. He found them under the floorboards a few weeks after her funeral. And after reading all of them multiple times over, he can basically recite them from memory. He continues reading. I wonder if his quirk will be like Tsukachi's or if he'll take after his mother. Plus, I've always been fascinated by his oldest daughter's quirk, lie detecting. So cool. Ever since Inko was in middle school, she kept a detailed diary, and in Izuku's opinion, her high school ones were the most interesting. She was 16 when she became Helios, and so that was when she wrote her coolest stories. He sits on the hardwood floor and leans against the running dishwasher. That was a close one. Later entries say that the youngest Tsukachi has a lie-detecting quirk as well. That could have been very bad if Izuku didn't get out of there as quickly as he did. Izuku. He hears Toga's footsteps coming down the stairs and he quickly shoves the diary back into its hiding place. What's up? I thought you were asleep? He chuckles nervously. She frowns. Bad dreams. What about you? Why are you down here? I'm watching out for thieves? He winces internally at his atrocious lie. Toga doesn't buy it for a second. She crosses her arms and looks at him. Liar. She sits down next to him. Not like it matters though. No? She's always been peculiar and he supposes an ex-villain wouldn't be very opposed to his vigilante side gig. She hums an affirmation. Do you want coffee? He chuckles. It's 4 a.m? So? We work in a cafe, we might as well take advantage. She brings out 2 mugs for both of them. Plus I need practice, you know I'm awful at making lattes. Toga has become a comforting presence in Evergreen. She can be a little hyper, but she makes him feel a little less alone. She hands him a mug as she sips her own. So what was your nightmare about? He figures he should offer a listening ear in return for the caffeine. Oh, just the usual parents' middle school bullies? She smiles despite the sad subject. That's not fun. He gets it, he really does. The little sleep he gets is plagued by thoughts of the fire that killed his mom and his life at Aldra Middle School. Yeah, but it's better now. He looks at her quizzically. Because I have you. And the kiddies and Evergreen. He smiles. He remembers what it was like moving into the apartment and leaving his old life behind. Evergreen really is quite the place, isn't it? I'm half convinced it's magic. He chuckles. He's happy she came down. Reading his mom's writing always leaves him with a weight on his shoulders. It's sad knowing how happy she had been and how young she died. The rest of the night flies by as the two teenagers talk until the sun rises, aided by copious amounts of coffee. And so I told him to screw off. You did not. Izuku gossips with Himiko as he strokes Poseidon, a gray cat who shines blue in the hazy morning light. Did too. There's a knock on the window and Toga jumps to glance at the door. Oh, it's Mr. Hobo. She grins. Must be morning already. Izuku frowns. Is it really past 6 already? He looks up to the clock and sighs. Mr. Hobo will probably want a coffee. He smirks at the nickname and gets off the hardwood floor to open the cafe. Sure enough, Shoyuta was standing just outside the door looking more exhausted than usual. Wow. Izuku gapes at the man. You look terrible. He rolls his eyes. Thanks, kid, always a pleasure to be mocked. Izuku smirks at him. Of course. It's my duty as the last honest person in this deceitful society. Behind him, Toga snickers as she prepares his coffee. Why did you guys open late, by the way? Shoyuta asks as he gets settled at the counter. Himiko and Izuku glance at each other for a moment before responding at the same time. The alarm didn't go off, Izuku says. Thieves. Himiko blurts out. They turn to one another once more and Aizawa's eyes narrow at the two. What happened to being the last honest person in this deceitful society, kid? Thieves happened. He sends the man a nervous smile he knows is not one bit convincing. Well, thankfully Aizawa never really pushes for answers. It makes getting along with him easy. Shoyuta pauses for a beat before grabbing his coffee. You know what I won't ask. At times like this, Izuku is incredibly grateful for the man. He's never really had a dad, but if he did, it'd be pretty sweet if he were like Mr. Aizawa. He pushes the thought aside as he goes to feed the cats. Bye, Mr. Hobo. Toga yells after him as he leaves. Izuku snorts. We've got to coordinate our lies. I know, right? She cackles. Izuku kicked a rock in the street absent-mindedly. He was just coming back from the store and wanted to enjoy the nice day, but Toga needed flour for pastries. He'd also picked up a bag of fresh pig's BLD too. She hadn't asked for it, but he knows she's been running out. So he was minding his own business when some slime decided it was a perfect day to murder a child. Wonderful. Just great. He dropped his groceries, wincing as he heard a few eggs break. You've gotta be kitty dash. Before he can finish his sentence, the slime surrounds him and he's in a muck of green goop. So rude, honestly. And while planning an escape, he catches a glance of red, yellow, and blue. He decides he might as well let this play out. No sense in drawing too much attention anyway. All Might lands with a crash and a bang. The slime is dealt with in a matter of moments. Are you all right, young man? The hero holds out an arm that Izuku takes shakily. Then he wonders what the man would say if Izuku asked him a question that's been burning a hole in his brain for years. Would he be honest? Would Izuku even want him to be honest? Before he can think his decision through, he's grabbed onto the hero's leg and is going up, up, up into the sky. 30 minutes later. Well, that sucked, but he was hoping that the #1 hero would be a little less prejudiced, but he supposes he is the face of hero society. There would be hell to pay if he was found being sympathetic to a quirkless kid. But he doesn't have long to linger in his disappointment though, because he hears screams coming from a few blocks away. It's too late to put on his vigilante gear, so he bolts there just as he is in his old t-shirt and shorts. Holy. And I'm starting at UA in the fall to look for a successor dash. Oh. But you show true hero potential dash. Izuku has been staring at his hero with wide eyes for the past 5 minutes straight. He knows he looks idiotic, but he can't bring himself to care. All Might is offering his quirk? It takes a moment for Izuku to realize that All Might has stopped talking and is waiting for an answer. What can I think about it? He asks pathetically. As incredible as it is, Izuku doesn't want to put his foot in his mouth and make a stupid mistake. All Might looks a tad disappointed at this, but he seems to understand that it's a big decision. Of course, my boy. He brings out a piece of paper and writes on it, "This is my number, Make sure no one else gets a hold of it and call me if you want to discuss this. Izuku vaguely registers the hero placing the paper in his hand as he struts off in his buff form. What just happened? A few hours later. Okay, this is fine. It's fine. It's 11 at night and Izuku grabs his notebook to organize his thoughts. First of all Might is Yagi Tashinori from the cafe. That's weird, but ultimately not necessarily a problem if he really thinks about it. He's only interacted with Yagi at the cafe once. Plus it wouldn't matter either way. But if he takes one for all it might conflict with all for one. The two quirks are highly combative and dangerous and who knows what would happen if someone had both. Though one for all would be helpful for getting into UA. While Izuku doesn't doubt his abilities, a leg up wouldn't hurt. Then his thoughts turn to his father. He knows quite a bit about the man from his mom's research but there's still a lot of gaps in his knowledge. He may learn a thing or two from Yagi but he wants to know more than that. He rips out the page he was writing in and incinerates it quickly. He has a clear head now and he's not stupid enough to leave evidence sitting around. He knows what he needs to do and he might as well get going now. 30 minutes later. Izuku steps into the rowdy bar and pretends he doesn't notice the stares he's getting. He jumps up to a stool at the counter and taps his fingers on the table excitedly. He's always liked coming to gray zones, there's so much fun. He smiles at the bartender even though he has a mask on. Hey Dabi. The scarred man turns around and nods to him. What's up Greenie? Dabi, also known to very few as Tuya Todoroki, has worked at the Bloody Body for the past few months and Izuku thinks he's amusing. It isn't every day a hero's kid turns dark. He remembers the day he discovered Dabi's secret. He was shocked. He had been doing his usual background check into every new person he gets to know and there it was clear as day. Frankly Izuku is a little surprised that more people haven't figured it out. I want to speak to Jiren. He sighs. I need to pester him about something. I think I heard he's going to come here in a half hour. Oh, and settle a bet, will ya? Oh God, what is it this time? He whines. Some of the patrons bet on crimes they think Helios has committed. Dabi usually comes out winning. Arson? Yay or nay? Oh yeah, for sure. He nods seriously. F yeah. The man yells, you owe me 3,000 yen clash. A burly man sighs and hands over the cash. You couldn't have lied? He smiles humorously at Izuku. Sorry Clash. Yeah, I came across some human traffickers a year ago and, boom. He mimes an explosion with his hands. Dabi cackles from behind the bar. It's pretty strong to make the man laugh so Izuku feels a twinge of pride at this. Never bet against Greenie and their proclivity for violence. Dabi smirks. Hey. Izuku pouts, I'm pretty peaceful. Clash snorts, you're probably the first arsonist to ever say that. Izuku chuckles. Well, in my defense I was left unsupervised. Just then the bar door swings open and Izuku jumps out of his seat. Just the man I wanted to see. Jiren spots Izuku and walks right back out the door. Izuku cackles and drags the man back into the bar. You wound me Jiren. Jiren sighs, what is it this time Helios? He tries to act like his mother would have with the man. It's a little difficult though as all he has to go off is her old journals and his own memory from how she interacted as a mother. I just have a few questions then I'll be out of your awful hair. He beams at the man. That's convincing, right? Tell me everything you know about All for One. Jiren stiffens. Not surprising. We should go somewhere quieter. Lead the way. Well, that was entirely disappointing. Izuku left the bar a few minutes ago and his chat with Jiren left lots to be desired. Izuku asked questions and Jiren lied about his knowledge of the 200-year-old supervillain over and over again. He reaches his rooftop. Technically it was Tiffany's Adult Toys rooftop but Izuku figures he puts it to better use than they do. And brings out his phone and begins to search for the information Jiren wasn't divulging. Now Midoriya wasn't necessarily an expert hacker but he knew enough to get around. This was his third or fourth time digging into the online presence his father had. Unfortunately his father is ancient and old people are so off the grid it's bizarre. The previous times didn't dig up much but hopefully he'll have better luck tonight. And sure enough things have changed and he finds a few more scraps of information. There's some movement from an organization called the League of Villains. A silly name for a group of incredibly dangerous individuals. What nefarious things are you up to tonight Helios? Jesus. Izuku jumps, don't sneak up on me man. I'm tightly wounded. Aizawa huffs, oh I've noticed. I was wondering when you'd see me. Not very cash money of you dude. He shakes his head. Aizawa tilts his head, you're around my age yet you still talk like a teenager. He comments. SHT Izuku had forgotten that people think Helios is an adult. Suddenly Midoriya gets an idea. A bad one? Sure. But an idea is an idea and Izuku Midoriya isn't a coward. He smirks under his mask. That's because I am. I am what? He's not getting it. A teenager. Aizawa freezes. Everyone seems to assume I'm the original Helios. Foolish of you guys to be honest. He waves his hands nonchalantly like he's not revealing incredibly valuable information that might get him killed in his sleep. So your Aizawa is speechless? Izuku feels like he deserves a medal for that accomplishment. A quote from an old pre-Quirk era movie rattles in the back of his mind as he responds to the man, intimidating? Awe-inspiring? A child. I prefer the term prodigy, but I guess that's applicable, he shrugs. I'm the successor of the original Helios, but people think I'm like 30. Which is gross. I'm not old. Aizawa sighs at the not-so-subtle dig at his age. Isn't it good to have people thinking you're older? Oh yeah, for sure it's helpful. So why are you telling me this? Izuku smirks because no one, he pauses for dramatic effect, will ever believe you. F nailed it. Aizawa looks at him and shakes his head. Jesus kid. I can't believe I never considered this as a possibility. Izuku hums, lots of people don't. And after a decade people had forgotten what Helios was like exactly. That made it a lot easier to impersonate her. Her? The original Helios was a woman? Shoyuta asks. Why is that surprising? He asks, cautiously. He likes Aizawa and hopes he won't say some stupid SHT. He just shrugs, just information I didn't know before. How did you know her? Maybe I'll tell you someday. Izuku stands up, but not today. For a second Izuku indulges that idea. What if he told him? The whole deal. Villain father, insane quirk, and a dead ex-vigilante for a mother. Would he be scared? Would he arrest him? Would he hug him? He shakes himself from his delusions. Get your head out of the clouds, Deku. Aizawa nods fair. Have a good night, kid. Don't die. I'll try my best, sir. He salutes to the man before jumping off the roof of Tiffany's Adult Toys and into the dark alley. Aizawa changes the age range for the search and gets started sifting through potential suspects. While he's not out to arrest Helios, it would be helpful to know their identity. Sometimes a little prying could be helpful. After a while he comes across the profile of one Midoriya Izuku. After closer inspection he sees that his neighborhood barista is registered as quirkless. But he just clicks a few buttons to exclude quirkless people from the search. Because Helios has a quirk after all. And Midoriya Izuku doesn't. Much later Shoyuta will recall this moment and wish he looked further into the boy. But that is neither here nor there. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey through What If Deku Was Owner of Cat Cafe. I hope you found it as intriguing and thought-provoking as we did. A big shout out to Arch12 for crafting such a compelling story. Don't forget to check out their profile on Archive of Our Own for more amazing works. The link is in the description below. If you liked this video, please give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and don't forget to subscribe to What If Deku 2.0 for more fascinating explorations into the world of fanfiction and fantasy. Your support helps us create more content like this, and we're always excited to hear your thoughts and suggestions in the comments section. See you guys in the next video.